TWI video, you're going to get great tips and tricks on how to wrap this refrigerator with brushed gold metallic film. Now you might think, well, that's a very easy, straightforward install, but this film is very thick, very stiff, and there's a lot of raised objects to work around, so let's get to it. The material being used is 122 centimeters wide or 48 inches, and one idea was to have the brushed pattern go horizontal on the refrigerator. But based on the length of the side piece now, chose to have the brush pattern go vertical. That means no butt joint. So now based on the fact that the brush film will go vertical on the refrigerator, now I base my measurements on the width of the panels, and therefore I'm going to cut it accordingly. And because the refrigerator is going to go vertical, that also means the cabinets around the countertop are going to go vertical as well. And once I have the measurements all set, it's time to prep the panels. Using the grid on the backing paper as a way to cut the panels as straight as possible. Now it's time to prep the area around the refrigerator. The material that I'm using is interior film, no air egress feature, super aggressive, and it's a little fragile. So using masking tape on the outside area is absolutely critical to make that install super smooth, especially around those raised objects like the vent and the handle. Now it's time to prep the surface. Obviously cleaned and degreased it like crazy because this is a refrigerator that was used, so a lot of grease built up on there. Very important to put adhesive promoter on all the edges, do a 360 around each section. Always make sure you allow that adhesive promoter to dry for about 5 to 10 minutes before install. And while it dries, I'm prepping the back of the panel, and this is for the long vertical section, which we'll begin with. So I use that backing paper cutter, release it, and now ready to rock and roll. Now this panel, because it came off the roll and is going vertical right now, this is the natural straight edge off the roll. And I'm lining that straight edge to the side of the refrigerator. This particular refrigerator does not move at all, so there's no chance of moving it away from the wall. So by having masking tape there and prepping it and lining it up, I don't have to cut on the left, which is a big time saver. And with the material on the main area, now I open the door of the refrigerator and the freezer and tuck the material in. One option would be to take off the doors, but obviously that takes time, so I think in doing it in this sequence now, by opening the door, tucking the material into the inside edge, and getting the right angle of my knife, and you notice that my blade is very far extended in this gap, so getting the right angle inside there is a beveled cut to the inside edge. I can release the excess film, so I save a huge amount of time by getting the right angle of cutting, tucking it nice and clean, no need to remove the doors. And for the top, I highly recommend wrapping the top of refrigerators. Temptation is to cut to the top edge, but a lot of grease builds up on refrigerators naturally in the kitchen, so always a good idea to wrap around the top. Now move on to tips and tricks for the front door. Here adding masking tape to the side to lower the surface energy. Now here lining up the grain of the brush to the edge now, so it means it's nice and uniform, so it has good symmetry. Lock in the hinge right there because I use that backing paper cutter. And not getting too greedy, keeping the backing paper on so I have that nice even tension left to right. Then, once the top is set, tucking the material in around the handle. Now, this particular handle could not be taken off. This was actually glued onto the door. So that's why the masking tape comes in super handy, so I can tuck it in right to the gap. Now here's a little tricky section right here on the side, so I make a relief cut nice and high just to kind of release it from the top section. Now I cut into the door so it lays nice and flat. Use the hard side of my squeegee to tuck it really far deep into that gap. Again, that masking tape paying off in spades. There's a full tuck and cut in this gap, and then I cut the excess film away. Then an easy release. So you have to keep in mind that, as I said earlier, this adhesive is super aggressive, but it doesn't look like it because, again, the masking tape is neutralizing that. Make a cut on the corner on the top side now, and then I roll the film around the edge by adding heat. This relaxes the film. Again, as I mentioned earlier too, this material is super thick, super stiff, so that heat is really critical for relaxing around the edge. Now I'm focusing on the side of the door right now because I want to open it to finish the other side. So if I open the door right now, it'd be very hard to cut this. So always cut the area on the door closest to the hinge first. That allows you to focus on the front section of the door. And you see that masking tape paying off again. Now for this edge, I'm going to let it play basically in full real time right now. So I make a relief cut at the top, 45 degrees away from the corner. Add heat to really relax the material and shrink it to the edge. Very critical. Don't round the corner at room temperature. Allow it to shrink a little bit. That's the little zero stretch logic. And I'm baby squeegee strokes right now, keeping my squeegee really rounded on that edge to form a super tight seal. Otherwise that material is going to lift. Right here I see a little buckle in the material right now, so I pick it back up because it wasn't going to form a tight seal on the edge. So once I get it set to the edge right now, again holding that door with my free hand at the top so it doesn't shift, baby squeegee strokes again, so I don't get too greedy right here. Very, very important to get a super tight seal on that corner. You can see the firm pressure, and I'm actually torquing the squeegee as I kind of round it right there. You want to get a softish squeegee. And then once that corner is set, now I can take it to the edge in a fatter squeegee stroke right now. So keeping that 45-degree angle top to bottom. And if you do it in the right sequential order, not only do you get a nice tight seal on the corner, but you avoid a lot of bubbles. Notice the angled in cut right there on the edge, slightly beveled, so it has that good long-term hold. Now for the upper corners right now, you don't have to get super precise on the upper corners because it's not a high visual area. So basically I'm going to fold around the top section there. Once I fold around the top section, get a tight seal on the main edge and get that main piece down. Fold this piece down, have a little triangle at the upper corners. Those are called quick and dirty corners. And this material, because it's so stiff, even though I add heat, it doesn't quite go down all the way. So I highly recommend using this tool. It's a very popular tool in Japan for interior film, where I can actually heat it and actually seals that corner nice and tight. Now for this raised object here on the side, this vent, very hard to take off. So I highly recommend, in this case, creating a template. So what I'm doing is I'm taking backing paper that I used from the other sides, I'm masking tape it to the refrigerator, and then I'm just basically tucking it into the raised object. So making relief cuts when I need to, and I want to make this as precise as possible so the backing paper doesn't cost me anything. I am spending a little bit of time right now in the prep phase, but it's going to pay off on the install. So now I take that template to the work table right now and then trim it off to the piece. So now it's going to make it much easier for the install. So now that I have it prepped and cut out, now it's time to prep the liner side. I'm going to use that same backing paper cutter. This one comes from NT Cutter, very easy and straightforward to use. Do it about a 1/3 from the top right now. It's a very good place to start. So it's not all the way at the top, just enough to get on the main flat area. I double and triple check that it fits top to bottom, left to right. Really want to make sure this is precise. Keep in mind that I also have to factor in making sure that that brushed metallic pattern is nice and uniform as well. So lots of things to factor in. Just don't kind of put this on and have those patterns be crooked, because then obviously it's going to lead to low quality and maybe a costly redo. So the top section, you see how easily it forms around the top, no stress. Then here making tiny baby relief cuts, and you can see again that masking tape paying off as I work it around the corner. Super fragile film, and notice I'm making very careful relief cuts. And the reason for this is, again, the film is super fragile. You make those relief cuts and it splits into the body. It might lead to a costly redo, so be super careful about that. But you can see how easy the template made this install. Once everything's set, taking extra time to do a super tuck around this vent to get the material in as far as possible. And masking tape helps for sure. On the corner here and on the bottom where the countertop is, basically making it just a standard cut, because I'm going to wrap the area around the stove and also the countertop. Then I'm going to put silicone in later, so no need to make an overlap there, just a standard, easy, straightforward cut. And so with that, the install is done. As you can see, very beautiful final result and a fairly tricky install, but with these great tips and tricks, made easy. Thanks for watching. Justin Pate.